I give.
While filming Animal House, Belushi was still a full-time cast member on Saturday Night Live. So naturally, he decided to do both at the same time across the entire country. The schedule went like this. Monday through Wednesday, Belushi was in Eugene, Oregon, inhaling cafeteria food, terrorizing extras, and turning Bluto Blooters into a comedy legend. Wednesday night, he'd get on a plane. Thursday morning, he's walking into 30 Rock for SNL rehearsals. Friday, more rehearsals. Saturday night, live television in front of millions. Sunday, back on a plane to Oregon. Repeat every week for roughly 7 weeks straight from late October through mid-December 1977. The rest of the cast couldn't figure out how he was still standing. By all accounts, the guy ran on 2 speeds, full throttle and unconscious. There was no in-between. Whatever downtime Belushi had in Oregon, he spent soaking up the local scene. He struck up a friendship with Eugene blues musician Curtis Salgado, who introduced him to the world of urban blues, a connection that would eventually help spark the creation of the Blues Brothers. Even off the clock, this man was building something. Meanwhile, SNL creator Lorne Michaels was watching his flagship show get stretched thin. When Dan Aykroyd was offered the role of D-Day, Michaels pushed back hard. Landis has said Michaels threatened to fire Aykroyd. Aykroyd's own telling was a bit more diplomatic. He said he chose to stay so as to not leave the show understaffed. Either way, Belushi got the pass and kept up the bi-coastal grind across a compressed 32-day shoot that would have flattened most people before the second week. The folk singer on the stairs wasn't some random background player. That was Stephen Bishop, a legitimate singer-songwriter whose hit On and On had cracked the Billboard Top 15 and friend of director John Landis, who'd already appeared in his previous film, The Kentucky Fried Movie. The staircase scene wasn't even in the original script. It got added during production, and Bishop ended up in the middle of it, strumming something gentle, bringing a little warmth to the party. Wrong house. Mid-strum, Belushi's Bluto walks over, grabs the guitar, smashes it against the wall, hands back what's left, and mutters, sorry. The party continues. The folk era dies on a fraternity staircase. Bishop knew the guitar was going to get destroyed. What he didn't fully prepare for was Belushi coming at him full force. Bishop himself later confirmed it was still genuinely terrifying, even knowing what was coming. The crew had only 2 guitars for the scene, so there wasn't much room for error. They got it done in 2 takes, and Bishop kept the guitar from the second take, had the entire cast sign it, and still has it. The song he was playing, a 15th century English folk tune called I Gave My Love a Cherry, also known as the Riddle Song, wasn't chosen for its beauty. It was chosen because it was public domain. No licensing fees, no royalty headaches, just free music that existed long enough to get obliterated by a guy in a toga. A souvenir from the 5 seconds of folk music that never stood a chance. The cafeteria scene was shot in the University of Oregon Student Union, a spot the students had named the Fishbowl, and director John Landis had been deliberately stripping Belushi's dialogue down to almost nothing. He didn't want Bluto delivering lines. He wanted a force of nature. Landis later described what he was going for as a cross between Harpo Marx and a Cookie Monster. Pure physical chaos with zero filter. So when Landis noticed Belushi piling his tray with an absurd amount of food between setups, he didn't ask questions. He told the camera crew to stay with him. What came next wasn't rehearsed, wasn't discussed, and wasn't anywhere near the shooting script. Belushi stuffed his cheeks with mashed potatoes, slammed both fists into the side of his face, and hit the table with, I'm a zit. Get it? The reactions from the cast sitting across from him weren't acting. They had no idea what was coming, and the genuine disgust on their faces made the whole thing land twice as hard. One improvised gag in a college cafeteria, and Belushi helped set the template for the gross-out comedy playbook. Every food gag and deliberately revolting set piece that followed in the decades after traces back to the guy who looked at a plate of mashed potatoes and saw an opportunity nobody else would have taken. The night the cast became a real fraternity started before a single scene was filmed. John Landis didn't want his actors pretending to be fraternity brothers. He wanted them to actually feel like one. So before filming began, He brought the Delta actors out to Oregon about 5 days early. No rehearsals, no script work, just time together. During that week, a few of the actors got invited to a real fraternity party on campus. They assumed it had been cleared with the fraternity. It had not. Things went south fast. James Widows, the guy playing Hoover, threw a cup of beer at a group of drunk football players, and Tim Matt later recalled the football team coming straight at him. Widows got his teeth knocked loose. Bruce McIll caught a black eye. Karen Allen screamed herself hoarse, trying to break the whole thing up. The next morning, a local student referred Widows to their dentist father, who patched him up before shooting got underway. Landis almost certainly didn't plan for a fist fight, but after that night, the Brotherhood wasn't a performance anymore. Then the Omega actors arrived and walked straight into a freeze-out. Landis kept the two groups separated. No socializing, no shared meals. Kevin Bacon later said he could hear the Delta guys partying from his room at the same hotel. Music, laughter, the whole thing. And he was never once invited. At one point, Mark Metcalf walked into a coffee shop where the Deltas were eating with the director, and Landis pointed at him and yelled, "It's Niermeyer. Get him." The Delta actors started throwing food and heckling, all off camera, all very real. So when the Omegas looked genuinely annoyed by every Delta in the room, a lot of that wasn't manufactured. Long before Footloose, long before the 6 Degrees game turned his name into a party trick, Kevin Bacon was a 20-year-old kid waiting tables and hoping somebody in Hollywood would notice he existed. He landed the role of Omega Pledge Chip Diller after director John Landis told him to be smarmy. Bacon had no idea what the word meant, but he made a face that sounded like what SMY should look like. Landis loved it. That was the whole audition. Then came the premiere. Times Square, big night. Belushi rolls up in a limo. The cast spills out onto the red carpet and Kevin Bacon takes the subway. He gets to the theater and ends up on the wrong side of the velvet rope. Another actor finally spotted him and waved him inside, but security checked his ticket, told him he had the wrong color for the good seats, and sent him to the back of the theater. Not even close to where the rest of the cast was sitting. As for the after-party, Bacon has told the story 2 ways over the year. In one version, the only response he got was, "That's nice. Where's Belushi?" In another, he couldn't convince anyone he was in the film, gave up, and took the subway back to his bar shift. His own words say it all. He called it one of the most depressing nights of his life, which makes it that much better knowing the guy who couldn't talk his way past a theater usher ended up becoming one of the most connected actors in Hollywood history. The Death Mobile started life as a Lincoln Continental. The car Flounder's brother loans the Deltas is presented as a 1964, though the actual Death Mobile prop was reportedly built on a 1966 chassis. Either way, we're talking roughly 6,000 pounds of Detroit steel, built for an era when cars were designed to survive anything. John Landis needed it to look destroyed. The Lincoln did not cooperate. They crashed it, hit it, did everything they could. The steel just absorbed it. Landis himself later said the metal was so thick they had to bring in a skip loader just to bang the car up enough for the damage to register on camera. Then came the parade sequence. The crew built the Death Mobile into a parade float complete with a turret, a skull and teeth grill, and a head taken from the statue of Faber College founder Emil Faber, all disguised under an EAT banner. It looked spectacular on screen and completely eliminated the driver's line of sight. The man behind the wheel was Bud Ekins, the legendary stuntman who doubled for Steve McQueen in the motorcycle jump in The Great Escape. Tim Matt gravitated towards Ekins on set, and just before they rolled, Matt asked him how he could see where he was going. Ekins's answer was straightforward. "I cannot see a thing." Matt volunteered to ride along anyway. No cinematic reason to be there. He just wanted in. He later described it as hanging on for dear life. A 6,000 pounds Lincoln tearing through a parade scene with zero visibility, and a stuntman who'd already made peace with the situation. Out of control fraternity brothers accidentally rewrote the entire comedy playbook? That was Animal House. Released by Universal Pictures in 1978, this low-budget gamble turned a cast of mostly unknowns led by John Belushi, Tim Matt, John Vernon, and Donald Sutherland into a full-blown cultural phenomenon. It grossed over $141 million, launched careers, and somehow convinced an entire generation that wrapping themselves in a bedsheet and calling a toga was a legitimate Saturday night plan. But behind the food fights, the toga chants, and the absolute chaos, there are stories most people never heard. And some of them are wilder than anything the Deltas ever pulled on screen. Today we're counting down 15 weird facts about Animal House. And stick around for number 1, because the way this movie ends created a formula comedies are still copying nearly 50 years later. Before we get started, hit that like button and subscribe. It keeps these retro deep dives coming every week. Alright, let's check out this frat house. Number 15, the $20 million mistake. Universal Pictures wanted nothing to do with Animal House. Studio president Ned Tannen read the script and hated it, called it vulgar, dismissed co-writer Harold Ramos as unproven, and made it clear the project was going nowhere. Then Tannen gave John Landis one final condition: get a real movie star attached or the conversation's over. So Landis called in a favor from an old friend, Donald Sutherland. I'm waiting for reports from some of you. I'm not joking. This is my job. The two had known each other since Landis worked as a crew member on Kelly's Heroes back in 1970. Sutherland was a legitimate film star. MASH, The Dirty Dozen, Clute, the kind of name that made a studio stop saying no and start writing checks. Sutherland said yes. A small part, Professor Jennings, about 2 days on set. The moment his name hit the paperwork, Universal approved the $3 million budget. No Sutherland, no movie. And here's where it gets painful. The studio offered Sutherland a choice. His day rate reportedly around $25 to $35,000, or 2% of the film's gross. Sutherland didn't think the movie had a chance. He took the guaranteed cash. Then Animal House pulled in over $141 million on a $3 million budget. Director John Landis later estimated Sutherland left close to $20 million on the table when you factor in the ancillary revenue. And that's before decades of home video, cable reruns, and licensing piled on top. The man who saved the movie from ever getting made also left millions behind because he didn't think anyone would show up. That's the kind of math that follows you around forever. In the early stages of Animal House, the casting wish list read like a Saturday Night Live roll call. CHVY Chase as Otter, Bill Murray as Boone, Dan Aykroyd as D-Day, Brian Doyle Murray as Hoover. It fell apart almost immediately. Of the original wish list, only Belushi was interested. Aykroyd passed, as we mentioned, and the rest moved on. Then there was CHVY Chase. Landis didn't want him, not because he was from SNL, but because he was already too big. Landis wanted unknowns. The studio disagreed and ordered Landis to hire him. So Landis showed up to a lunch meeting with Chase and the producers and sabotaged the whole thing. He told Chase the film was a pure ensemble, no clear lead, and then pointed him toward foul play, where he'd be the star, like being Cary Grant or Paul Newman. Producer Ivan Reitman was furiously kicking Landis under the table the entire time. Chase walked away from that lunch thinking Animal House was beneath him, which is exactly what Landis wanted. Chase later said he regretted not doing the film. So the roles went to actors like Peter Ryer, Bruce McGill, and Tim Matt. Faces audiences had never seen before. That ended up working in the film's favor. A cast built around a superstar would have made Animal House feel like a celebrity vehicle. A cast where nobody outshined anyone else made it feel like an actual fraternity. Quick pause. If you remember watching Animal House for the first time and immediately started quoting Bluto to anyone who'd listened, you're in the right place. Hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the rest. And drop a comment. What's the first Animal House line that comes to mind? We want to hear it. All right, get in line, pledges. Back to the chaos. ABC got a look at the box office numbers and rushed a TV version onto the air before the popcorn was cold. Delta House hit ABC in January 1979, barely 6 months after the movie became a phenomenon. Several original cast members came back, and they even kept the Plutter's name alive by introducing Bluto's brother, Blotto. Everyone except the one person who actually made the whole thing work. The network filed down every sharp edge, layered a laugh track over single camera footage, and turned an R-rated riot into something safe enough for the family hour. The show actually performed well in the ratings at first, but behind the scenes, the producers were in constant battles with ABC over content. After 13 episodes, they pulled the plug. But buried inside this forgettable spin-off were two names nobody was paying attention to yet. A 20-year-old Michelle Pfeiffer showed up in a role credited only as the bombshell. Barely any dialogue, more background presence than breakout role. Well, thanks Robert. It's fun at Delta. It wasn't her first screen credit. She'd already had a 1P episode appearance on Fantasy Island in 1978, but it was one of her earliest footholds in Hollywood and the beginning of a career that would eventually include Scarface, The Fabulous Baker Boys, and 3 Oscar nominations. And behind the camera, writing episodes, John Hughes, 4 of them to be exact. He'd been a regular contributor to National Pun magazine and got upgraded to television scripts years before 16 Candles, years before The Breakfast Club. In 1979, he was just a guy cranking out scripts for a sitcom that wasn't going to survive its fight with the network. Delta House didn't last, but it quietly gave 2 future legends their earliest footholds in Hollywood, which is more than most shows that actually get renewed can say. The movie started as something way darker. Before Bluto Blutarsky became the patron saint of academic failure, Animal House went through several very different lives before it became the movie we know. The earliest version was called Laser Orgy Girls. Douglas Kenney and Harold Ramos wrote it together, a high school satire centered on a teenage Charles Manson. In their draft, the young Manson holds drug-fueled gatherings and indoctrinates girls into a cult that worships spaceships. That script hit a studio desk and died on contact, probably for the best. Director John Landis read it and admitted it had some brilliant stuff, but called it too outrageous. The note from National Amun publisher Maddie Simmons was even blunter, as Landis later recalled Simmons saying, "You can't have all this gang rape stuff. Put it in college." So, the concept got aged up. The Manson angle got scrapped entirely, and the writers brought in Chris Miller, who'd been writing stories for National Lampoon based on his actual fraternity experience at Dartmouth. Miller's real-life stories gave the script the grounding it needed. There were a few more drafts and title changes along the way, but the core transformation was clear. Anarchic energy redirected into something an audience could root for instead of recoil from. The wild, unhinged spirit of those early drafts didn't disappear, though. It just found a new home. The cult leader became a fraternity brother. The extreme behavior became fraternity chaos. And all that authority-smashing energy got funneled into a guy in a stained sweatshirt who couldn't pass a single class, but somehow became the most beloved character in the movie.